June 1950. The peninsula still slept under early summer rain when the first shells crossed the 38th parallel at 4 a.m. The hills trembled. Telegraph lines went dead and the sky flickered white. Villagers opened their doors to the sound of artillery rolling south. The invasion had begun swift, precise, and silent no longer. For Kim Il-sung, this was the moment he had waited for. He had promised Stalin a lightning war, 3 days to Seoul, 1 month to control the south. His tanks and artillery, supplied by the Soviet Union, led the way. Civilians thought it was thunder. But by sunrise, the thunder had names and uniforms. The first towns fell before dawn's mist had lifted. In Moscow, Stalin received the coded reports with a faint smile. He had not openly approved the invasion, but his silence had been consent enough. He viewed Korea as a test, a way to gauge American will without risking Soviet lives. Each telegram was a move in his quiet chess game. For Stalin, politics always came before humanity. In Seoul, confusion reigned. Messages from the front grew desperate. Enemy tanks in Uijeongbu. The government fled south. Bridges were blown behind them. Families clung to carts. Children cried for fathers already gone. The city fell within 3 days, just as the timetable predicted. By then, 500,000 people were already on the road to nowhere. In Washington, President Truman received the call at his home in Missouri. Mr. President, North Korea has invaded the South. He paused only a moment. Then we must act. By dawn on June 26th, he had ordered the 7th Fleet to protect Taiwan and the U.S. Air Force to assist Korea. He knew this was no local quarrel. It was the first test of the post-war world. Across the ocean, the United Nations convened an emergency session. The Soviet delegate, boycotting over China's seat, left an empty chair that changed history. Without a veto, Resolution 82 passed. Member states shall assist the Republic of Korea to repel armed attack. The world had spoken, and the flags of 16 nations began to move toward a small peninsula. By the end of June, the war was no longer Korean alone. It was the Cold War made visible. Ideology now had a battlefield. Seoul burned for 3 days before silence returned. Smoke rose from the Han River and bridges hung in pieces. Citizens wandered through the ruins searching for family names among the dead. The air smelled of ash and oil. The city's fall confirmed what the world feared. The Cold War had turned hot. South Korean forces retreated toward Daejeon and Busan. Their lines collapsed, but their spirit did not. Every mile south became a new front. Refugees and soldiers shared the same road, the same hunger and the same hope to survive until nightfall. The roads filled with carts, oxen, and dust. Somewhere in the crowd, a boy carried his father's military cap, too big for his head. In Washington, Truman faced a decision heavier than any since Hiroshima. His advisors debated, could America fight another war so soon? By August 1950, the United Nations forces were pressed into the corner of the peninsula. A narrow crescent around Busan was all that remained. The soldiers called it the Pusan Perimeter. But in truth, it was held together more by courage than by maps. Each night the hills echoed with gunfire, and by morning, the line still somehow stood. American, British, and Korean troops fought in the same rain, their uniforms soaked and their boots half sunk in mud. Morale was thin, yet a strange hope lingered. Because one man refused to accept defeat. That man was General Douglas MacArthur, commander of the United Nations forces. He was 70, sharp as ever, and known for plans that sounded impossible until they worked. As reports of retreat reached Tokyo, he lit his pipe, pointed to a map, and said, "We will land here, Incheon." His officers stared in disbelief. Incheon was a tidal nightmare, its harbor narrow, and the difference between high and low tide over 30 feet. The enemy held Seoul only 20 miles away. Logistically, it was madness, but MacArthur smiled. That, he said, is exactly why they will never expect it. The plan was codenamed Operation Chromite. It was a high-stakes gamble. A strike behind enemy lines to cut their supply routes and recapture Seoul. If it failed, 30,000 men could die in the mud. If it succeeded, the war might turn in a single week. Truman gave reluctant approval, and preparations began in silence. Marines drilled endlessly, naval officers memorized the tides, and every radio transmission was coded to sound like routine patrols. Even the sailors didn't know their true destination until the night before departure. On September 15, 1950, before sunrise, 261 ships gathered off the coast of Incheon. It was the largest amphibious fleet since Normandy. The sea was black and still. Every man aboard waited in breathless quiet, listening to the hum of engines and the distant heartbeat of war about to return. At 6:30 a.m., the first shell burst over Walmy Island. The thunder rolled across the harbor as landing craft surged forward through smoke and fire. Marines leapt into the surf, rifles held high, and climbed the seawall under a rain of bullets. By noon, they had broken through the defenses. By dusk, the port of Incheon was secured. MacArthur stepped ashore with his trademark corncob pipe between his teeth. He looked around the burning horizon and said quietly, "The tides of war have turned." In 2 days, the United Nations troops pushed inland. On September 28th, after brutal street fighting, Seoul was liberated. The Taeguk flag once again rose above the battered capital. Citizens, gaunt and weary, emerged from cellars and ruins, weeping as soldiers marched past. For the first time since June, hope returned to the air. Truman called it a miracle of command. Newspapers hailed MacArthur as the hero of Asia, yet victory brought temptation. Success at Incheon convinced him that total victory, even reunification, was within reach. He told his staff, home by Christmas. Ignoring cautious voices, he ordered the army north of the 38th parallel. His goal: destroy the North Korean forces before winter. Columns of tanks rolled through Pyongyang, and the soldiers believed the war's end was near. No one realized how close they were to another border, the frozen river that separated Korea from China. Across that river, Mao Zedong watched in silence. He saw the advancing troops and whispered, "They are coming too close." Behind him, hundreds of thousands of Chinese volunteers waited in the mountains, hidden by mist and snow. The victory at Incheon, brilliant as it was, had awakened a sleeping giant. By October, MacArthur's forces stood at the Yalu River. They could see the Chinese shore lights glittering in the distance. The soldiers cheered, believing the war was over. But in those flickering lights, another storm was gathering, one that would plunge the peninsula into its darkest winter. Truman answered quietly, "If we do not stand here, we will stand nowhere." It was a declaration of intent. The defense of Korea was now the defense of freedom itself. By early July, the first American troops landed at Busan port. They were young, untested, and unaware of what awaited them. They marched north into the rain, believing the war would be brief. Instead, they met a storm of steel. Outnumbered and unprepared, they fell back again and again, until the southern edge of the peninsula became their final stand, the Pusan perimeter. Stalin watched the reports and measured America's reaction with satisfaction. He had provoked the bear, and the bear had moved but not yet roared. Each day of battle told him how far Washington was willing to go, and in Beijing, Mao Zedong took note as well. He saw the flames on his doorstep and began to prepare his own soldiers, just in case the fire crossed the river. In just 2 weeks, a regional conflict had become a global crisis. The fate of a small, divided peninsula now hung between empires. For those who lived through it, there was no talk of ideology, only survival. One old man later said, "We didn't know who started it. We only knew the sky was falling." By July's end, the line of battle had frozen near the southern coast. The invasion that promised victory in 30 days was now trapped in mud and rain. And in that mud, the first seeds of resistance began to grow. The war, meant to be swift, was only beginning its long, bitter course.